Devansh, hi, good to
Yeah,
have you with
sure.
us. How have you been?
I'm good, Ashu. What about you? How's
I'm
how's
doing
the
very
weather
well.
keeping you and everything?
I am very well, Devansh.
Perfect.
Expecting for
Perfect.
more and more rain, right, and
Yeah,
further to improve.
yeah.
This is a good time, right? And I'm excited
Yeah.
to have you with us today. Because gig is something which is so ever since COVID happened, right? I think the world in a way started to very
Yep.
seriously take it as a whole, right? I
Yep.
think the good part was that the working ecosystem kind of got disrupted, right? We thought out of the box, right? Organizations were more agile, right? And I think
Yep.
that's just opened up a very, very strong possibility for gig
Yep.
as a whole.
Yep.
You were doing something very, very interesting in that space, and this becomes a very interesting conversation at that level. India has a problem of too many, right? The only way you can
Yeah.
actually solve that is through gig.
Yeah. Yeah.
In many ways,
True.
right? But before we do that, Devansh, I'd love you to give us a quick round of introduction
Sure.
for yourself, and we dive into the conversation from there on.
Sure. Right. So, Ashu, thanks for having me over. I'm as excited about the conversation as you are. So, let me just kind of start by introducing myself. Just a quick introduction. I'm Devansh. I'm one of the co-founders and also the CEO at Unigigs. Prior to starting Unigigs, I was a graduate at the University of Edinburgh in the UK. So, I stayed there for 4 years from 2015 to 2019. Did my Bachelor of Science in dual degree in mathematics and statistics.
Wonderful.
Started kind of understanding, and that's where, just a quick kind of a story as to the background of before I went to the degree, just kind of take it back from there. So me and one of my co-founders, Harsh, we've both been school friends. We've been best of friends since 13, 14-year-olds. I was very, very good at mathematics. Maths as a subject was something that I really, really kind of fell in love with. My co-founder, Harsh, he was very good at physics. So we kind of used to, freelance tutor as 14, 15-year-olds. And that's where, the first seed of you should say forming a company or entrepreneurship kind of started in us. Then I went to the UK. I stayed there for 4 years, came back, worked at the startup called Grow First, which is now Blinkit, kind of
Right.
now also acquired by Zomato
Right.
as we speak. And, the idea was to kind of understand what the startup culture in India looks
Right.
like. Because, one thing that really kind of piqued and intrigued me while I was studying in the UK was the number of side hustles our classmates would take.
Right.
I used to discuss this a lot with Harsh. He was here at IIT Delhi. I was there in the UK, and the idea was we saw yaar itne sare bacche there, like so many college students, so many doing like
Right.
so many side hustles. Somebody is working at Starbucks, somebody's working at Zomato, and they have excellent skills. Everybody had some skills that we believe that they could monetize. And that's the whole intent of where Unigigs was kind of inception was there.
Interesting.
It was around in 2020, where I quit my job at Gropers. Harsh was still working at this HFT, and we kind of started jotting down the idea in Jan of 2020. Writing down as to what we believe our version of Unigigs could be. Talking to a lot of classmates, talking to a lot of friends. The idea essentially, initially, if you look at the name itself, it's we wanted to call it a university of gigs. Then we pivoted a bit. So the idea became kind of where everybody with skills and some sort of monetizable skill could come to the platform and showcase their talent and straight away start earning money from it. We started as a student only platform initially, kind of and that's where actually the pandemic kind of hit its course.
Right.
And as you mentioned, it was just kind of it was sad from a world perspective, but one thing that we really, really saw, was the number of layoffs and everything that started happening with the pandemic in place. Especially because, you see traditional businesses or businesses, the way they function, they need, some sort of revenue. If the lockdown
Right.
happened, everything kind of went into a standstill. And one of the reasons why they had to now cut down their expenses was the operational ones, that is
Right.
hiring people full time, hiring the large forces for full time, and then kind of laying them off. So that's where we felt, there's this insecurity that sort of crept in people. I talked to, actually, I come from a business background. My father runs a very traditional business, he's into construction. It's been
Right.
27 years. He's run a profitable, since inception start business. So I used to have a lot of back and forth, as to dad, why you, like why are we letting go of so many people at once? What has happened? More, in fact, most of the workers that we have are gig workers. So we
Right.
were like, why we hire, why don't we hire more and more gig workers in place, and why kind of focus so much on the on the full-time aspect of it. And that's where I kind of, this whole idea kind of took its shape, took its form into what it is right now, and yeah, so that's kind of the long and short of where we did, how we did it, and where we are at.
Super. Devaansh, no, I think it's heartening at many levels, right? And I think, I at least come from a school of thought where, if you've experienced something firsthand, right? I think the intensity of that is very useful, right? And I think, you kind of then build it with a lot of integrity, honesty, right? And I think you're very close to the cause, right? And I think that is very, very critical in the industry, right? And I think in your story, that stands out, right? Your observation, you possibly bring it yourself, right? And that kind of stands out, right? And I think the good part is that India is at that point. Where students are now kind of opened up, right?
Absolutely.
And there are a variety of other macros that are kind of moving in that direction, which make it just so much more critical for them to go out and do that, right? And my personal sense is that just helps them learn at a very different level, with all of these, and improve, right? And eventually become a foundation for a better career, in times ahead, right? Now, Devaansh, we're gonna move into talking about, what's the current stage of business, right? Tell us a little more about where you are. Conceptually, I think in sync, right, with what you're kind of trying to do. But where are you right now? I'd love to understand that.
Yeah, sure. So we kind of launched our first MVP, sometime around July of last year. It took us about 4 to 5 months to kind of get the wireframe ready, the product ready, the first version that we built, now I can say it very proudly, because then the kind of the best version that we built is right now. So that was not very good at all. It lacked quite a few features, quite a few functionalities, but the idea was to, take that dip water test. I am from the school of thought, where I personally believe, until the time you go out and show people what you're building and, what problem that you're trying to solve and how are you uniquely positioned to solve it, there's no point just kind of sitting in a room and discussing among founders or among the team, because everybody is passionate about building the product, right? So, it took us about 4 to 5 months, to launch the first MVP. As I said, while we started acquiring customers, with very, very limited marketing budgets, the idea was to kind of, form focus groups and take more and more in, as to, now that we understood the problem, as you mentioned, we had a first-hand experience of what essentially the problem looks like. We wanted to create a problem, our solution specifically curated to the market that we are trying to target initially.
Right.
I feel India is very, very different in terms of, every product, that works in the West, doesn't necessarily need to work literally at that straight point.
Right.
So we thought, we kind of ended up talking to a lot of freelancers in India, working in famous platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and all. Right. And one of the key things that we identified, was the fact that they were all paying very, very high commissions to these platforms. Right. It ranged well within to 20 to 25%. And of course, these platforms commanded that commission because of the supply and the demand chain that they had already built. So the idea was, why don't we kind of change the game? Why don't we go zero commission? Why don't we try and look at the problem a bit different than the way people are solving it? And right. The focus was, another thing that we kind of realized, while sort of building the product, was the ability. I always believe, Ashu, that freelancing or gig economy is in general, is very much, a word of mouth business, is very much a business, that is built by, building connections, So we felt, all these platforms that were already there were working on a hub and spoke kind of a model, something that we also started with, looking at Unigigs, more as a freelance marketplace. And that's where, we felt, why don't, in our head, we think of Unigigs as, if a LinkedIn met a Fiverr and an Upwork, but,
right.
We curate it specifically for the gig workers. And build connections, and also make it zero commission, because we wanted to sort of change the game a bit, now that we realize that India is such a price sensitive country, right. Fiverr and Upwork are so popular here, already in India. So you have to establish yourself very, very uniquely in a market like this. Right. So that's where we kind of,
Interesting. A bunch of very interesting points, right? Now, honestly speaking, commercially, and I think this is something that a lot of startups do, right? We essentially go free in the initial version of it, right? That honestly is the easier side of it, right? I think the difficult side of it is to continue to maintain the demand and supply, right? We're going to come to that in just a bit, right? I'd love to understand some of that in in a slightly more detailed way, right? But before I do that, Devaansh, now one of the things that we've seen in the market, right, at least in the Indian market, is that there are a lot of versions of gig platforms that have come up, right? Or freelancing platforms that have come up, right? There have been a lot of inspiration in the Fivers of the world. Now, what has happened is, and I'd love I'd love to understand, how are you looking at it and kind of dissecting it? Is that a lot of these platforms, while they've come in, right, there's a lot of listing, for example, that happens, right? Because we have a very, very large, available
user pool,
of course, right? Which is constantly looking for a scientist, right? Now, the bigger challenge is that in a lot of these cases, these are not, for example, say coding is something which is, institutionalized in many ways, right? It can be packaged very well, right? You have very clear matrices to sort of assess that, right? When it comes to, say, for example, designing, right? There are very clear assessment matrices, right? So, when it comes to, gig as a whole is a massive opportunity, right? But when you start looking at it in a slightly more detailed way, right? There are fewer tasks that there are matrices to evaluate, right? I could have a different version of outcome. Devaansh could have a completely different version of outcome.
Absolutely.
The mechanics changes, right? And that is one reason that gig, for example, has not really taken off, right? There's always some other discrepancy which has been there in that entire space, right? So while there have been people who've been interested to fund it also, they've, in a way, the transactional possibility has been very, very little, right? What's your sense of it? How do you sort of see that? And are you trying to sort of, institutionalize a lot of, for example, these tasks that get written down, right? I mean, I'd like to understand, how are you ensuring that there is no dispute that arises once the discovery happens?
Yeah, so couple of interesting pointers, that you've already mentioned, Ashu, and this is something, that I've also kind of deeply been working on ever since the inception. One is, I've always felt, while, gig economy is a big term, it's a big market, I still believe there are a lot of categories and subcategories into this market, which have different kind of inflection points, if I may say. For example, I believe music and audio is a category that's big, that's great, but it is still a very, very niche market if it comes to, the Indian side of the things. So, when it comes to sort of solving the problems of the gig economy, I am a firm believer of this, that you should probably think about niche markets and, focus on niche markets. For example, I believe, as you mentioned, designing is one category that I believe is going to be a big. Content writing, I'm sure you must have heard the name Pepper Content. That's big, and one of the reasons why they're big, is because they focus on one niche, that is very much in demand, and that's what I feel as well, that while, the platform is open for everybody, while the platform, has that entire, kind of focus on the categories. Eventually, what we are trying to do is drill down on those categories, looking at both the supply and the demand, because I believe, the only way you can ensure the supply and the demand on a platform like this is focus on, what exactly are the categories that people look for when they come to the platform. Like, something that an interesting pointers that I kind of saw on Fiverr and Upworks of the world was, while they had hundreds of categories, 80 to 90% of their revenue kind of comes from, the niche or the four, like the hero products that they say, they've got like hero categories and that's where most of the traffic comes from. So, what I look for, when we are sort of drilling this down, is to focus where the supply side is big in India, because what I believe, Ashu, personally is, when it comes to the gig economy, and freelancing in general, I believe, we could be the big players in the market purely because of the labor arbitrage opportunity that exists in India, So if we play our cards right, we focus on, what are the niche categories that people look for, and, kind of focus on the demand side of it outside of India, and build the supply side in India, because of the labor arbitrage opportunity that exists within the market. That's the whole aim of it, and we've already started moving in this direction. We've now that the first intent was to get the supply side on the board, try and drill down on, as I mentioned, those categories, and then, focus on getting the demand side from the West, purely because while India is going to be big, I still believe that there's this emergence of the startup culture in India. Internet penetration is at an all-time high. As you mentioned, COVID has kind of taken its impact, but I still believe, most of the businesses in the country, do not believe in outsourcing most of the tasks that they carry out. They are like, yeah. So that's yeah.
Please go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. So so we have already kind of set up a company in the West, and the idea is now to generate that demand side from outside of India. And the way, as you mentioned, is making money, as you mentioned, kind of focusing on the money part of it. So we've already got an escrow in place. We've given all the escrow management systems in place where people can pay for a service, the money is in their escrow account, the tasks get completed, and we release the payment back to the seller, once you've kind of approved. So we've managed to, achieve that. But what I personally am more focused on, rather than generating these transactions, is to I am more focused on building connections. Like I believe the reason why a platform like LinkedIn or a Facebook, is so popular is not because of the features that it has, but because of the network that it has created. So the focus is to build the network first, and kind of try and monetize that network eventually, which is like we've already had a subscription plan in place, where while coming to the platform, showcasing your skills, listing your everything is free, building connections is free. We charge a premium for for kind of as I mentioned, listing your services on the marketplace, or applying for jobs as people come and post to the platform. So if you were to apply for a job, you need to buy some connections, or you need to buy the subscription plan, as in whatever you feel comfortable with. So the idea is to monetize the network and not really focus on the transactional side of things, because I believe Fiverr and Upwork are already doing that, and they are the sort of flywheel effect that they've already created, will be difficult to replicate. So you need to focus on what are the things that are missing in the market that they are not doing, and how you can be uniquely positioned to kind of focus yourself on that market.
Interesting. Now, Devaansh, a couple of very interesting points that you highlighted, right? I mean, labor arbitrage is something that all of us understand, right? And I think the entire outsourcing industry is built on the back of labor, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, I think a couple of very interesting points that you highlighted, right? And I would love to, understand them a little deeper. Right. Now, one of the things that you kind of highlighted is essentially, is availability of a lot of talent, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you look at India as a market, right? I think our talent is essentially skewed in just for very few, very few skills at that institutionalized level, right? That's largely that, right? So, for example, tech
makes sense.
Normally, we have a lot of talent development, right? But as soon as you start looking outside of it, right, we hardly have, very systematic talent, right? So, skills is a huge challenge outside of the core domain. That is number one. Right. Number two is, and that and that possibly is also because our education system is such where we do not incentivize the kid, or we do not support the kid to learning newer sort of aspects, right?
Absolutely.
The other thing which is very important, Devaansh, right, in your scheme of things, and something that I want to understand, right? Now, essentially, what you're doing is, so LinkedIn is offering some of the similar pieces, right? There is a network which is already there. People are already active. They're creating a lot of content. They're engaging with a lot of people, right? People outside of their networks also going out and supporting certain causes and stuff like that, right? So the network is already there. Now, when you're talking about, say, exposing Indian workforce to the West, right? I mean, you already have a platform like Fiverr, right? There is a certain track record that they've established, right? Now, what I realized, right, is that you're actually up against some of the largest platforms out there, right? What happens to the demand and supply in an environment like that, right? So supply is easy to move, right? Because if a freelancer out there is anyway looking for an opportunity, right? Demand is already there on other platforms, right? Now, bringing in that demand from those platforms into your platform, there has to be something exclusive, right? You cannot be generic, right? What is that exclusivity?
Absolutely.
Also becomes possible. You're more in the process, right? What is it that you're doing differently vis-a-vis, say, the Fibers of the world, where aware audience is already there, acting, transacting, and LinkedIn, right, which has the masses, right? I mean, honestly speaking, the way I look at LinkedIn today is that it's become a very massy entertainment platform, right? I mean, people are posting their family pictures and so on and so forth, right? I mean, it was supposed to be for a very because the dimensions have changed, right?
Absolutely.
Which makes your job more difficult, right? Whether we like it or not. How are you looking at your position, right? Because you have, like I said, very two large established players. Demand and supply is a constant challenge, right? If you don't fulfill it in time, it's going to fizzle out, right? It's going to dry out.
Absolutely.
You're going to become redundant, right? So you run that risk of redundancy, right? While you are zero cost transaction, right? Which will come to in just a bit, right? But what's your thought of of this competition and moat, for example?
Yeah.
How are you tracking it?
So a couple of things, Ashu, and this is something that, as you mentioned, we've been like deeply focused on. As you mentioned, the supply side was the easier part to get. The
Sure.
demand side is actually the main kind of elephant in the room, if I were to say.
Yeah.
So a couple of things, that I've really identified. One is, as you mentioned, why LinkedIn is a very good platform, for networking and everything, and kind of even the process of finding freelancers. A couple
Sure.
of things that we've kind of identified, is because at the end of the day, the core idea of LinkedIn is to build a professional networking community, right? Whereas for us, the network that I'm talking about just works as a kind of a hook for people to keep coming back to the platform again and again. The core idea that we have, which is a bit different from LinkedIn, is, the profiles that we build on the platform are specifically, if I were to say, what you were to look for in a freelancer. Like, for example, if I'm looking to hire a freelancer, the first thing that comes to my mind, is what is the portfolio that they have? What are the companies that they work with? What is the experience that they have? So the profiles that we've created on our platform are all portfolio and work based. They're not resume based that you see on LinkedIn. Because the core idea of it is not to function as a freelancing platform. Our core idea is to work as a freelancing platform.
Right.
Second, this is the LinkedIn side of the thing. Also, we made the process of finding people much easier on LinkedIn. On Unigigs, for example, like if you were to look for a content writer, who has a 5-star rating, that will be very, very difficult to find on a LinkedIn, but it's much easier to find, kind of filter and search on our platform. Sure. Second, as you mentioned, the demand side of it from the Fivers and the Upworks of the world, right? What I've seen, Ashu, is these platforms have lost that exclusivity, purely because of the big behemoths of brands that they've become.
Right.
Like the supply has gone so so big, in these platforms, that the sole focus of me when I'm looking on a Fiverr and an Upwork is to just focus on the number of average ratings that they've got, as opposed to the portfolio or the quality of work that they've put out.
Sure.
And second, what I've also seen, is because of the high commissions that these platforms are charging, anything within the range of 20 to 25%. Eventually, no seller is going to pay that from the pocket. They're eventually going to charge from the businesses, that 20-25% extra commission, whatever that the platform is going to charge. It's like as simple as the prices of burgers or on if you order on Zomato are going to go up because the restaurant is going to kind of levy that back to you.
Right.
So what I believe, is making it zero commission drives that cost arbitrage also in a way, because the services that we are going to offer on the platform are going to be much cheaper, purely because we're not charging any commission. So,
Right.
Whatever extra. And second thing, the idea is to move from an unmanaged marketplace that we've been running, that you see on Fiverr and Upwork, and carefully curate a managed marketplace out of it. This is a learning that we found, ever since we launched. We were actually an unmanaged marketplace.
Interesting.
Now we have gone into a marketplace, where the process of you being able to list your services on the platform, or the process of you being able to showcase your skills on the platform goes through a bit of a process of we actually curating the people for you,
Right.
because the idea is to focus on the quality and not on the quantity, that Fiverr and Upwork does. And of course, as I mentioned, the cost opportunity that we've kind of seen.
Interesting. Devaansh, the way I look at the gig play of sorts, right? I mean, I've been a big fan of it for a very long time, right? I mean, and I think last 6-7 years we've seen phenomenal evolution, right? And there are these marquee platforms which have now almost, I think Fiverr is a unicorn, right?
Yeah.
Now,
it's a publicly listed company.
Right? Now, what we see is that there's a second generation, right? So there was this first generation, which was actually listed from classifieds, where people will come in and do a variety of things, right?
Absolutely.
And because of the conversion problems that were there, right? Because the inconsistencies in delivery that were there, right? In the second generation, right? Now, second generation, I look at companies like Urban Clap for that matter, right? Urban now. Right, I look at companies like Pepper, for example, right? They're solving a very, very specific problem, right? They themselves are very, very large, right? And in a way, they are actually eating to this marketplace model that kind of exists. They are also marketplaces,
absolutely,
but they are managed super sharp,
yes,
very
yes,
precisely built,
yes,
very
yes,
matrix-oriented marketplaces, right?
yes, yes,
Where I, as a business owner, still am dealing with freelancers, but there is a
yes,
layer of connection, right?
yes,
There is a layer of
yes,
controlling which they built, right?
absolutely.
Uh, and that is taking away the share from the marketplaces, right? Do you
Yes,
see
yes,
yourself evolving in that direction? Because
absolutely,
you
absolutely.
have
Yeah,
300 types of jobs, for example, listed, right? It is just
absolutely.
so difficult. I mean, and I'm going to come to the business model in just a bit, right? But
Yep,
that just
yep.
becomes so much more difficult at many levels, right? Over a period of time, have you narrowed down on your priority list? Of
Yes,
course,
yes,
love to
yes.
understand.
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, Ashu, absolutely on point. This is a key learning that we've seen after we built the product. Once we kind of launched the product, we saw, just the amount of services or the profiles that were being created on the platform, ranging from all the different skills. And that's where once we kind of started going out to the demand side of things. This is something that I've clearly seen. There are like three major as I say, the three major critical categories that we narrowed down that we saw, was the most kind of, they were the most demand heavy categories, and that's what we are corely going to focus on. One is graphic design, second is content writing, and third is, the tech part of it. What I am personally very, very kind of, really, because as I mentioned, we are at the end of the day building a tech product. I am the most excited about tech as a category. I believe there's a huge potential there, purely because after the pandemic, if you've seen, literally almost every website, every company now needs a website, right? You need to have a web presence now because people have gone so used to working from home. Even all the shopping that people do is now shifted online. Most of the stuff that you're doing are basically online. So when you do stuff online, tech as a category is something that I am the most excited about. I personally believe that our focus as a platform is going to be make a tech driven community to start with, and where all the profiles, as you mentioned, are going to be managed. The whole supply chain is going to be completely managed, from and we've already started working on that. We've already kind of put the functionality part of it in place, and this is a key learning, as you mentioned, that we've identified it in the whole supply side of the things. I want to be flexible enough, to be very honest, Ashu. If I believe, that eventually, tech is there, tech is doing well, but there's a demand that comes from people, who say, and what I also believe, in conjunction with this, Ashu, is also the fact, that when you're looking to outsource your work, all right. So let's just look at a company perspective. Let's just look at a startup perspective. Like for example, if I am looking to create a website for my startup, very rarely does it happen that I believe it's a one-man job. I don't think it's a one-man job. A lot of the times, I believe you need that entire team of people, who can sort of do the stuff for you. The reason why I think a platform like Pepper Content is doing so well in India, is because ever since it's gone into that managed place, you don't need to worry about dealing with the freelancer yourself. You just need to deal with the platform. You just need to every source of information that's being passed upon, is between the platform and you. Something that happens with Urban Clap as well.
Right.
So what I believe, is eventually what I want is, suppose for example, there's a business who comes to kind of say, this is the task that I'm looking to outsource, right? I want, us to have a team where we break that tasks down into smaller subtasks and divide it among a team or a pool of freelancers that we have on the platform, and actually the person has to deal with the project manager that's been assigned to the platform and by the platform, and not the entire army of freelancers. Why I say, this I believe could well be the direction that we're looking at from a business standpoint as well as a company standpoint, is because kind of when I look at the West, I'm very intrigued by it. I've lived there for 4 years, so I'm very intrigued by the way these guys work and these guys function, so our business opportunity, I believe, lies there, because once you've sort of given them, as you mentioned, a managed marketplace that a Fiverr or an Upwork does not give, coupled with a platform that is comparatively going to be much cheaper for them, and third, as you mentioned, heavily curated, like kind of like I'm not sure if you've heard about Dribble. So Dribble is this actually a platform that I've been very, very intrigued by, it's a community of designers. The way it started, initially was the idea was to build a LinkedIn, but for designers, So what they used to do was people used to come and showcase your skills. That's it. The idea was to come and showcase your work that you've put out and build the connections. Once it built the connection, once it built the community, and it was heavily curated. What they used to do was it was an invite only platform initially. So what they used to do was, if they like what you do, they invite you to the platform. They build that entire team, they build that entire supply side, and they, the reason why I keep saying, Ashu, that I'm not so worried about the demand side, because I believe that the world has a supply problem, not a demand problem. The reason why I say that is, because see, a business will look to cut down on expenses, whatever they feel is something that can be outsourced, something that is not very, very IP to me. They look to outsource it, and I believe that a business is platform agnostic. What I think of it is like, like as a business, like if I talk about myself, right? मुझे जो भी जहाँ भी सस्ता मिलेगा मैं वहाँ चला जाऊँगा. That's it, right? And जहाँ भी I believe my needs will be catered to the best possible way, I'll choose the platform. So it's not so much about, me caring about Fiverr or an Upwork. It's about what platform caters to my needs.
I'll tell you what, when I look at the world, right? When I look at, I think God has been kind, and I get an opportunity to talk to a lot of people, right? I think the bigger problem in the world is not demand and supply, right? The bigger problem in the world is not knowing what you want as an outcome, right? And I think that just is an opportunity, but also a point of conflict, right? I think that really is
interesting. That's an interesting insight.
Important piece, right? And I think. How do you solve it? I think very clear answers, right? Be it a managed marketplace, be it open marketplace, right? Unless you have a clarity mind,
absolutely,
I think that is the massive gap area, right? Of sorts, right? But I think we're gonna save that, for the next time.
I think one of the ways to focus on this, Ashu, is in my opinion, when you are to solve a problem, as you mentioned, is not knowing what people want. I think one of the easiest ways, is to focus on a target group when you're small. And thank God we are small right now, so we can, move into that direction. Right. Is, focus on a small subset of the entire big picture that you have. Like for example, when I talk about businesses, right, it's a very generic term. Right. Every business has different text needs. Every business has different content needs. Every business has a different outlook towards, what are the kind of opportunities they're looking to outsource. So when I look at Unigigs, I specifically focus on companies, which are not VC investable businesses per se. Like for example, if there's a marketing agency, or if there's a design agency, or if there's a tech agency, right? They are businesses that work on, revenue. Like for example, what I'm trying to say is, what I mean by that is, if you have people, yes, the cash flow is there, then only you can hire people full time, right? So what I look of it is, focus on businesses that are in dire need of what you're building, So when I narrowed it down, what we kind of have been really, really focused on is businesses with an employee strength of less than 20, and businesses that are not VC investable businesses per se. Like for example, this is not a business that's going to, go to a Sequoia or a SoftBank, and people are going to pay them millions of dollars, to just get into it. So kind of focus on the small subset of the entire big thing that you have in mind, and build the product according to their needs, build the supply chain according to their needs. I believe once you've managed to achieve that, you can then eventually look to expand, so expansion before retention is a motto that, I don't believe in. I think about, focus on smaller things that don't scale, because eventually when they do, you'll be able to, like I believe Pepper Content initially when it started, it's a journey that I've been really fascinated by. 2 Bits Pilani, very smart young guys, doing very well. Pepper Content is going big, it's going to the Western markets. But what I really, really, liked about was the fact that initially, if I just went through their journey, these guys actually were writing content themselves. They were not even focusing on building the supply side. They were focusing on what is it that, when I'm talking to people, like for example, मुझे content लिखवाना है, तो क्या type का content मुझे लिखवाना है, and then build the supply chain accordingly. So that's something that I'm really, really intrigued by, and that's that's the motto that we are trying to follow. But we want to focus more on the tech side of the things, because I believe 90 to 95% of the businesses eventually in the world are going to be run by tech, right? There's no hiding from that.
Interesting.
You and
Devaansh, there's just too much more ground to cover, right? Unfortunately, we're towards the end of our conversation, right? Right, and I would love to sort of cover some of these, very important points to the next conversation that we have, and hopefully soon. But what are the next? What are the next? Very quickly, what are the next 2.5 years like? I'd love you to summarize that for us. What is the game? You're an exciting market, right? You're full of energy, right? There are umpteen possibilities that are, I'm sure, that are visible. You're already kind of tapping into, right? What are the next 2.5 years like?
So let me talk about the next couple of years plan that we have on our radar, Ashu. One is, as I mentioned, deeply focus on tech as a category, and build a supply chain accordingly. Second is, we've now set up an incorporation in the US and started reaching out to even startups and smaller companies, as I mentioned, non-VC investable businesses, employees turn less than 20, and try and understand what their needs are, and literally just shift from an unmanaged marketplace to now building up a marketplace, and focus on a product market fit, which will be driven by eventually the user retention that we are looking to target it. From a business standpoint, from a company standpoint, our next 6 months are super critical for us. They're literally like, I believe the next 6 to 12 months are going to be really, really exciting for us in terms of the team that we managed to have on board. Right now we've got a team of about 7 to 8 people. We want to expand it to about 15 to 16 people, 20 people, eventually even 30, 40 by the end of this year. And the idea is, that we are all focused on one single aim of achieving that product market fit by the end of this year. And from next year onwards, kind of focused on expansion and scaling and everything else.
Devaansh, this has been an absolutely spectacular conversation. Thank you so much.
Pleasure here as well, Ashu.
I loved every bit of it. I think this is an exciting market, right? I think there are no doubts about it, right? But I think the world is getting more complex, right? In terms of its demand, in terms of
absolutely.
We are in a territory which is not necessarily known to us, right? And that earlier used to be for specific markets, right? That used to be for developed markets, right? Where the markets are transparent, right? I think with COVID, the world has become a very transparent ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Right? Be it a country which is developing, and the nature of India as large as India, right? Or developed markets, right? I think they're essentially behaving now in the same format. Right. And I think with that, and this territory of unknown, right? Literally, there's no.
It's exciting. That's exciting.
It just makes gig as a massive possibility, because the ability of an organization to do something at a very minimalistic cost without really building that that long-term weight their operating strategy, right? I think is only going to be possible through gig platforms, right? So you can engage with them, right? While I say that, that's a massive positive. I think there is the bigger problem, right, of not knowing what you want as an outcome, right? Of course, for example, when you talk about tech, it's very definable, right, in terms of what you want. And at a product level also and so forth, right? But I think that larger sort of a sentiment of not knowing what the consumer wants, I think it's going to be a process of evolution, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right? While that is going to be there, possibly some sections of society will get into a zone which could possibly be of deferring taking calls, right? There's lastly indicators or do things that are visible, constant, so and so forth. So I think these are exciting times. Right? As a whole, I think you have no reason to complain, right? You possibly at the right time. I think your choice of prioritizing the market, your choice of prioritizing services, I think is really going to be important.
Absolutely.
And that is going to be fodder for us in the next conversation, right?
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Same here as well. Thanks for your time, Ashu. Lovely speaking with you. Looking forward to having a wonderful conversation again. Cheers, Ashu. Thanks for the time. Cheers. Thanks.
Bye.